This topic was in the headlines this week. The market response to the Communist Party Congress has been poor. Does that reflect business investors' view that Xi Jinping's strong political grip on power could mean a poor investment in China?
I think the market response indicates an uncertainty. I think any time when there's big news coming out of China being one of the largest economy in the world, it got to have an impact on the market. And I'm sure that as people digest the news, the market will recover. As we all know, market goes up and down. But I think the important thing to note is from the Party Congress report, the president has said that the opening up and the market reform in China will continue. I think that is a message that I think we should focus on. China's economy just recently announced the record of 3.9% GDP growth, which is of course lower than the 5.5% that people have expected. But given the size of the economy, 3.9% is a respectable increase. So I would say that investors should look at the fundamentals. Right now, what is troubling China's growth, obviously, is the COVID policy. I'm sure that as we get out of the pandemic, when things return much more to normal, things will pick up again.
What if things don't return to normal?
Well, it's hard to say, right? I mean, things do happen, and I can't see why things would not go back to normal. I mean, also we need to define what is normal. As we all know, after the pandemic, the return to normal anywhere else is not the pre-pandemic normal. So I'm sure that China, like other markets, like other countries, will find its equilibrium. And the potential of a size of economy like China, it has to be going on. It has a large population. There's a domestic demand. All these those factors have not changed.
What does this specifically mean for Hong Kong, the latest headlines? There's been a long retreat by business investors after the crackdown on democracy protests and the new national security law in particular, and it seems like foreign investors may be kind of spooked. Are you seeing that, and do you have any concerns that the Congress last week could exacerbate this?
I don't believe so. It is true that Hong Kong has faced some setback in the last few years. I do believe that the national security law is something that people have digested, because when it's compared to other part of the world where they have similar national security law, it isn't really not that bad. If we compare with the Homeland Security Act, the Anti-Terrorist Act in the United Kingdom, etc., people have largely accepted and digested that news. Yes, we have seen the pandemic and the policy on very tight quarantine requirement has driven some people away. But again, we are coming out of that. We're beginning to open up, so people will come back. With regard to the impact of the Party Congress on Hong Kong, I think it's important to note that on July 1st, on the occasion of the 25th anniversary of Hong Kong's return to the motherland, President Xi Jinping came to Hong Kong and gave a very important speech in which he said Hong Kong must retain its unique status under the one country, two system. Hong Kong's common law will be preserved. There will be independent judiciary as we always have. And these are very strong signals that the underlying factor for Hong Kong, for what had made Hong Kong great as an international financial center, remain unchanged. The transparency, the international level of regulation, we have a vibrant liquid market. Yes, we have setback, but the fundamentals haven't changed. So, market move up and down, and eventually I think the equilibrium will be found.
So what message do you have to foreign investors who are wanting to base their businesses in Hong Kong and list on the exchange that you're in charge of?
First, let me talk about the exchange. We are one of the most liquid and vibrant markets in Asia. We had a large number of IPOs. For the 7 years out of the 12, we were well number one. This year, we haven't done so well like everybody else. Everybody has suffered in terms of an IPO slowdown. But we have a very strong Connect program, which is connecting China with the world. Chinese investors can invest in our market through this Connect program. International investors can invest into China through the Connect program, and that is unique in the world. And as I said earlier, China will continue to grow. If you want to invest in the Chinese market, Hong Kong is the logical place to go, not only because of the Connect program, but because of all the other factors that come with it. So I would encourage people to come to Hong Kong to take a look and to see, that we haven't changed that much. We are trying to, open up and going back to the pre-COVID days.
So let's talk about the impact of climate change in China. This summer was extraordinary with, unfortunately, record heat waves and drought. And it seemed like this was a bit of a tipping point for the Chinese government seeing this issue. What does it mean in terms of business investment? Are you seeing the CCP Congress take steps towards investment in renewables, for example?
Well, I think China has done actually extremely well in the area of environmental protection and climate change. The commitment of 2016 in terms of carbon neutral was made, the pledge was made, and it's a serious pledge. And if you look at China nowadays, they have done a huge amount of forestation or reforestation in the last decade, and they will continue to do that. And now, if you look at renewable, China is the world's largest producer of wind turbine and the largest producer of solar panels. And of course, they are also not only just producing the hardware, they're also implementing it in the country. What will be needed in the next phase is to have technology breakthrough to make this renewable, to make the solar as well as the wind, that make it more cheaper and more accessible to not only to China but to the rest of the world. I would say that China's commitment in terms of ESG has become stronger than ever. And we saw that in the various initiatives, the government's initiative in different parts of China. And in Hong Kong, we're going to launch a carbon exchange very soon to capture the opportunities that come along in that area.
And finally, my former home, Washington, China is top of the headlines there.
Right.
Particularly because there are such high tensions between the U.S. and China right now. How are those tensions, the tensions between U.S. and China, affecting business growth?
I think on the one hand, there are Chinese companies that are delisting in the U.S., and some of them are coming to Hong Kong for listing, and we welcome any companies that is eligible, qualified to list on our market. It is true that in these days of very complex geopolitical tension, Hong Kong being a connector to the world, to China, we have to navigate very carefully. It is not easy. I think anybody would tell you in these days of mega tension, geopolitical tension, which is completely out of our control, our role is to maintain a steady, vibrant, and solid market. And that is what we will continue to do.
Well, I have about 1,000 more questions, but unfortunately our time is up, and I wanted to thank you so much for giving us your time and for everyone else for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne, for having me.